Okay, this is Chris Carlo. I'm sitting here at the clinic, acupuncture and herbal medicine, and I thought I'd share some info on a new project I've been working on. It's kind of actually a revision of something I worked on in the past, but I've added to. I'm writing an ebook that I'm going to be publishing soon. It's called Seven Emotions. Um, and I wrote this a few years ago as kind of a free giveaway on my website to try to help people have a kind of an alternative understanding of emotions, our emotions, and how they can influence our health. And then I've added to it with some simple yet powerful exercises, kind of like what I call self-care practices that you can do to promote better health, and that can be unique for you, right? We're all kind of dealing with different things. Some people maybe feel more anxious, some people might feel more depressed, or pensive, or there might be sadness or fear. There's different emotions that kind of affect us, or probably we're experiencing more so. And it would be good to have some tools to kind of bring some balance and kind of even out those emotions. So let's talk about this a little bit. This is a concept that's based in traditional Chinese medicine. And when I first got into studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, I found this paradigm very interesting. Uh, it's uh, it's something that really caught my attention, and I kind of did a deep dive into it to learn more and how it affects our health. It's often said that emotions can often be the root of many health issues. That's kind of a big statement there. Think about that. Oftentimes, I think in conventional medicine, emotional issues are not given the proper attention. Uh, you know, Prescription medications are kind of thrown at it, and I don't want to sound, um, I don't want to diminish efforts out there. There are people that are actually really struggling with a lot of emotional issues, and they need help. And if there are um, medications that can be helpful, that's going to be important. I don't want to diminish those efforts. But I think on a general level, uh, without going down the path of prescriptions, sometimes we can be in emotional states that end up unraveling our health slowly over time. Think about stress, just that word, for example, and how we have a lot of stress going on. As you know, if that's something you're dealing with and you do this day after day after day, you have a very stressful life, it just starts to unravel your health. It could affect your sleep, it can affect your digestion, and on and on. Okay, so this this project that I'm working on, I just kind of encapsulate seven emotions, and there's different ways to describe these emotions, but these are words, and we're trying to actually describe what I would call an energy pattern. In traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture and even practices like Tai Chi and Qigong, we talk about energy, we talk about Qi, and sometimes people get lost with that. But bear with me, try to feel this out a little bit and see where I'm going. So instead of words like anger or fear or joy or pensiveness, these different emotions that we might experience, think about energy patterns. Think about these emotions in regards to energy patterns. And why I say it this way is because sometimes the word anxiety might not relate with somebody, but the energy pattern might be more understandable. I remember the first time feeling anxious, and my heart was pounding, and I felt all full up in my chest, and I couldn't breathe well. And I kind of, it was kind of an interesting time. My oldest daughter was attending her first day of school in preschool, and I just felt I just really felt off. I didn't sleep that night. I was just worried. I wanted her to have a good day. I actually, when I was a kid, going to kindergarten, the first day of kindergarten, it scared the heck out of me, and I still have that memory of today. I just didn't want to go. Um, and I think that memory came back, and I was just kind of like a little unsettled about, you know, letting my daughter go off to a strange place for her, and she ended up actually doing fabulously with her first day of school. It was just wonderful. But I was feeling anxious that day, and I didn't actually have that word in my vocabulary as far as how I felt. I wasn't an anxious type person. So I didn't even know to think about that as a word for me to describe how I was feeling. But how I was feeling was fullness in my chest. And I felt like I had this rising and unsettling type feeling. Like I was being lifted off the ground, like I wasn't rooted down. I felt nervous, perhaps. That would be a word that I would use. But I didn't know to use the word anxiety. But you see, in this description, this personal description, there's an elevation going on, okay? And in this seven emotions paradigm, anxiety would fall into the category of worry. The mind is kind of going, it's ruminating. There's pensiveness, which is another type of emotion, kind of overthinking. But overthinking is more of a stuck or knotted type energy in the gut. People who are thinking a lot, sometimes over time, the gut, you could feel, maybe sometimes people say they got butterflies in their gut, right? Or they kind of feel nauseous or uncomfortable in the gut. Sometimes it can affect your appetite. There's kind of a lot of thinking. In traditional Chinese medicine, we say overthinking weakens the energy of the digestive system. Now, in this paradigm, I have it listed as the spleen and pancreas, and there's a lot to try to digest there. Excuse the pun. But there is a relationship between that spleen pancreas energy and the digestive system in the traditional sense of the stomach, intestines, and the digestive tract. But when it comes to anxieties, there's more than this kind of lower aspect that gets knotted up in the abdomen. That energy kind of elevates and comes up into the chest. So not only do we get a knotted energy in the lower part of the body, but anxiety is an elevation that comes up. Now the energy is knotted in the upper part of the body. And we know this by how the organs respond. So the lungs, when it comes to anxiety, the lungs and the heart can be affected as well, I would say, because they're occupying the upper part of the torso, and that kind of fullness, the anxiety has generated so much energy and it rises up and creates a fullness that there's not a lot of room for the heart to beat and the lungs to expand. Okay, and it can affect our breathing. It can cause a heaviness. Sometimes people say they feel like there's a weight on their chest, like, and they can't breathe. Okay, so there's an elevation to anxiety. So talk about some of the other energy patterns that happen, these excessive, what I would call negative energy patterns with each emotion that I've got listed here. We've got anger, for example. Anger is an explosively rising type energy, okay? Sometimes there's other words like frustration or depression, where there's kind of a bottling up of the energy, and then it explodes, often coming out as shouting and yelling, that sort of thing, okay? So it starts off knotted, and we say that this, and then it can rise up very hot, and we say this affects the liver system in the body. Oftentimes, I don't know, we can think about maybe perhaps somebody drinking alcohol too much. The alcohol overheats the liver, and then the voice becomes loud. And some people are happy when they drink, or some people might get angry when they drink. But there's this kind of rising, louder kind of expression verbally and such, okay? Fear, as a different emotion, has a way of descending, like impending doom. There's this fear, and all of a sudden you feel like, the blood is just draining from your body and you're turning white, a feeling of kind of, just sinking, energy draining from the body and being kind of drained out of the body. And that has a way of affecting the kidney system, and the kidney system in traditional Chinese medicine translates into what I would call the endocrine system, the adrenals, the system that is responsible for growth and production in the body. Very powerful system. And so that's what we think about with the kidney system. It's a very foundational type system, and fear can really have an effect on that. Sometimes people will not have control, say, of their bladder, okay, and have trouble there. And some people might have a leaky bladder where they're having trouble, holding and not having good control over urination, stuff like that, for example. And there can be a weakening of that system, of the bladder and the kidney, their appeared system in traditional Chinese medicine. And fear can, sometimes people will have a weakness of an organ, and it can be diagnosed in this medicine because they may express themselves in a way where they feel fearful, and it gives us some insight that there may be a draining of that certain organ in their body, a weakness in function. So when we talk about energy sometimes, or chi, we're also talking about function and how strong the function is of something, if it's weak or strong. So whereas anger can have an effect on the liver, so if we see somebody that tends to have tendencies of anger, I start thinking about the liver organ and how to treat that. If somebody's showing expressions of fear, I start thinking about the kidney system and also the bladder. Shock is a very sudden kind of thing that really decimates the energy. Actually, that's fear is more trickling away of the energy, whereas shock is just kind of a decimation of the energy. Joy is, you may think, what's wrong with joy, but generally a good sense of your emotional health is just being kind of even and consistent and not having too much of one emotion or another. That's excessive, so we want moderation. And joy, a different word that I would use, or a phrase, would be overexcited. Always kind of like jittery and overexcited. There's a leaking out of energy there. It's higher in the body, whereas fear is lower in the body, affecting the kidneys. Joy is a higher elevating and leaking out of energy in the upper body that can affect the heart, for example. I talked about pensiveness having an effect on the digestive system. And worry, we talked about anxiety, and that's another word we could use as worry. What's happening with worry? There's a ongoing pattern of thinking that doesn't resolve, okay? And that just wears away our energy. If we have a thought and we say for example, what am I gonna have for lunch? And you start thinking. So now you have a thinking process that's unresolved, and it can create a sense of worry or anxiety. So you start thinking, I wonder what's in the fridge. I don't know what I have at home. I'm not sure if the kids are going to like that. I got to go to the store. I don't know if I'm going to have time. You see, the worry is starting to build. But as soon as you start to realize, oh, I have that food in the fridge that I froze and I can thaw out, and that's what I'm going to have. And then all of a sudden you have resolution. You feel good. See, we want to be in a state of feeling good all the time. Not always being in a state of worry and unresolved, this kind of unsettling kind of state. That really wears on us. We want to feel settled, rooted, comfortable. And so that's an important key to good mental emotional health, is learning to recognize these imbalances, these emotions that pull us out of that state of feeling settled and resolved and comfortable, and realizing That stuff is weakening us and affecting our health. And be responsible to bring a balance to our health. Realize what we can control and can't control. Let go of what we can't control. And just try to bring a good state of support to our mental, emotional well-being by realizing these things. One last emotion is sadness, grief, or melancholy. And we say that affects the lungs. It can weaken and consume the energy in the lung system. If you think about what the lungs do, the active aspect of breathing is on the inhalation, right? When we inhale, the muscles contract and open up the lungs and air goes in. When we're sad, there's a shrinking of that effort. See, the lungs want to expand on inhalation. That's the effort of breathing. When we exhale, it's not really much of an effort. We just let go. There's muscle tension that opens up the lungs. And then we let go of that muscle. Just like contracting, if we contract a muscle and then we relax it. When we inhale, we're contracting muscles. That's the effort. On the exhale, we just let go. The air comes out. Well, when there's sadness, it shrinks the energy of the lungs, and the lungs are trying to expand, and there's this shrinking energy that's working against it, and it takes more energy and effort to breathe. So how do we know this? It sounds fantastical, right? It sounds kind of like a fantasy. What are you talking about? Well, we know this by observing the breathing. If somebody is really sad and grieving, they tend to sob. Right? They're crying and sobbing. What happens to the breathing pattern? It changes. The normal breathing pattern changes. Normally, we're breathing in unrestricted, we feel good. But when we're grieving, the shrinking energy causes us to have to inhale more strongly, and we can hear it. When somebody's crying, they're usually sucking in air more strongly. There's this right? Like when somebody is grieving because they're having trouble breathing in. The lungs are having a hard time expanding. The contraction of the muscles that cause the inhalation, that perpetuate that inhalation, is being impeded. So we say there's a shrinking and it affects the lungs. Okay? Again, emotions, what I'd like to point out is emotions. There's nothing wrong with emotions. It's important to express emotions. But that's what happens. There's a big swell of energy. You express the emotion, you let it out, and then you let it go. That's healthy. What happens is when we hang on to that and it bottles up inside us, or it's excessive and ongoing and it drains us, that is the imbalance. And that can result in a lot of different health issues. So, I'd like to invite you to check out my website. If you go to natureshealing.info, you can look up information on 7 emotions. I do have a whole information center on 7 emotions. I have a program that also talks about, there's these guided awareness meditations. So the meditations are about a half hour long. You hear my wonderful voice talking, guiding you. It's just a personal project that I had done, and there's different guided meditations for different emotions. There's actually a test. You can go and check off signs and symptoms to find out which emotion and which organs which category you find yourself in. And then you can relate that to one of the guided meditations. And they're relatively inexpensive. I think it's like $8 or $9, and you get an outline of the particular emotion and the guided meditation, and you get a deeper understanding of this paradigm, this system, which I think is very interesting. You get to learn an alternative view on emotions and how they influence your health, and they can also reveal internal imbalances. And then once you know that, once you have the awareness, you can take steps to be preventative. So, for example, I'll make it very simplistic, but, if we got a lot of rising type stuff happening like anxiety or anger, the therapy is going to be to call, promote a settling. That's the therapy. So, it gets more detailed because you could get into herbs and food and what could cause more rising or settling, or you could get into meditative practices or stress management practices or breathing techniques that can help with this. And that's what my programs are focused on. So check out the Seven Emotions Guided Awareness Meditations on my website, natureshealing.info. Also, stay tuned for this book that's coming out. It's going to be a great read that's going to be very affordable, just a few dollars really. I want to make it accessible. I think it's powerful. It has a lot of this information in it, and it also gives you some powerful self-care practices that you can use to take care of your health naturally, help you take control of your health naturally too. Okay, if you got any questions or comments, please leave them. Please like and share and spread the word if you find this valuable. I appreciate it. You take care and keep on the sunny side.